Hello comrades, it's Comrade Reese here, and if you're wondering what the bloody hell this thing is behind me, it's actually a wall tapestry. So anyway comrades, this is the first video where you pretty much see my face. You know, you've probably seen my face in my past videos, but I decided, you know, why the fuck not? I'll show my face again to all of those new comrades. So here I am. You know, I'm that guy in the profile picture, I'm that guy on the end screen. It's me. So, Prageru, those bunch of conservative opportunists who like to use their huge amounts of wealth to, well, you know, talk shit.
From the end of World War II, the United States and its Western European allies were involved in a nearly half-century-long titanic struggle with the Soviet Union, known as the Cold War. It was cold only in the sense that the Russians and Americans never came to direct blows, but it was certainly not cold for the Cubans, Koreans, Vietnamese, and others who got caught up in the communists' relentless drive to destabilise the free, democratic, capitalist world.
Capitalism may be democratic for you oligarchs sat up in your ivory towers, but for the ordinary working people, which make up about, let's say about 99% of the population, newsflash, it's not so democratic and free as you might like to think. I'll just use my country as a prime example. I was taught in school that democracy and dictatorship are mutually exclusive. But this kind of education deliberately just fucking obscures the fact that British democracy is, in reality, democracy for the capitalist class alone. Now don't get me wrong, there are multiple political parties, but these all represent the capitalist class. The policies of the Labour Party, the Conservative Party, UKIP, Plaid Cymru, the Scottish National Party, the Green Party, and the Liberal Democrats are the policies of business, of private property, of exploitation, and of imperialism. The ordinary working people of my country don't have the slightest say in how the country should be run. In fact, the entire British state is geared towards the armed suppression of the working class. Granted, this is quite difficult to see in times of relative social peace, but in times of unrest, it's all too clear. Like when the British government got the police and the army to suppress the workers during the general strike of 1926, or like when the British government got the police and the army to suppress the workers during the miners' strike of 1984. Therefore, British democracy, and not just British democracy, but a capitalist democracy as a whole, is what we communists call the dictatorship of the bourgeoisie, because it is democratic to the extent that there is democracy for the capitalist class, but dictatorial in the sense that the capitalist class maintains its exploitative relationship with the working class through means of repression.
When people describe particularly evil individuals or regimes, why is it that they use the terms Nazi or fascist, but almost never communist?
Well, the answer is pretty fucking simple. Nazism is the representative of the extremely reactionary imperialist bourgeoisie. Now, Nazi organizations, or at least organizations that are on the far right, they usually pop up during a crisis of some sort, like an overproduction crisis. An overproduction crisis is actually something that is caused by the capitalist system itself, and the reason why is just because of how capitalism works. It soon produces goods that nobody can buy. Capitalists do not produce for the fun of it. They do not produce because we need the things that they produce. They produce to make money. And how do they make money? Who are the biggest buyers of the merchandise? They are the ordinary workers. Capitalists employ workers, and when workers are employed by a capitalist, they work, they add new value, they only get part of that new value that they have labour to produce, paid to them as wages, and the rest of it goes to the capitalist. Now, it doesn't stop here, because the capitalists can only use part of it for their personal consumption. You know, even the most greedy capitalists cannot eat 100 chickens. Even the most greedy capitalists cannot live in 200 houses for the same night. And even the most greedy capitalists cannot have 300 cars for the same day. It just takes common sense to work that one out. So most of the new value then goes towards productive consumption, like setting up establishments which make more money. But in order for these establishments to survive, the capitalist has got to be able to sell, and the workers have got to be able to buy the products that the capitalist is trying to sell. However, ever since capitalism became a system, around about 1825, and the fact that it constantly impoverishes the working class, it has witnessed an endless series of these crises of overproduction when things cannot be disposed of. So anyway, rather than looking at the logic like we communists do, Nazis and other emotionally driven shit-stirrers love to put the blame on the immigrants, or black people, or the Jews, the trade unionists, and even us communists. When the Nazis in Germany were becoming popular, the first things they did were to blame the Jews for Germany's loss in the First World War, and then for the hyperinflation that followed it. They then set the Reichstag on fire and blamed the communists for it. Therefore, when they came to power, because Hitler was seen by the German ruling class to be very useful, the Nazis managed to get into government and started to crack down on communist organizations, persecuting Jews, and later started the Second World War in order to control the markets and resources of other countries, and also to basically make the world German. However, the reason why we are all still here today is because my band of brothers and sisters in the Soviet Red Army kicked Hitler right up the arse and liberated Eastern and Central Europe, making not just the Nazis fall to their knees, but it also made the capitalist ruling class in many of the Western European countries shit themselves so much that they actually started giving out concessions like the NHS in Britain. Communism, on the other hand, is the representative of the working people, the 99%. Communism means to liberate the working masses from the oppression of the capitalists. Communism in itself, meaning a stateless, classless and moneyless society, has never actually been tried yet. However, its predecessor, namely socialism, has been tried. Socialism means to rise up against the capitalist oppressors and put the workers in control of the state and the means of production, all to be wielded against the overthrown capitalist class. This is what we communists call the dictatorship of the proletariat. Some good examples of where this actually happened were the Soviet Union, China, North Korea, Cuba, Vietnam, and Laos. So, yeah, it's a big fucking difference.
So here's the simple answer to why you are right. It is a more practical, generous, and compassionate way to live.
Oh yeah, let's just safeguard capitalism and keep on extracting the surplus value from the working people, only giving a tiny fraction of the new value that they labour to produce back to them as wages. Realise that these workers can't afford to buy the products that the capitalist is trying to sell because they are so desperate to make profit through high prices, which will then cause an overproduction crisis, which will then put the working class into more and more poverty, and if it comes to it, send the police and the military just to go to town on the workers who resist the capitalists. Yeah, that sounds really fucking compassionate. Yay, capitalism. Let's give it a golden sticker with a smiley face on it, or a fucking lollipop.
In the contemporary world, it's taken as a given that capitalism, with its free market and profit motive, is based on selfishness and produces selfishness, while socialism is based on selflessness and produces selflessness.
Okay, now we're getting somewhere.
Well, the opposite is true.
Maybe not. Did you just completely forget about the fact that under capitalism, you don't just get jobs, you compete for jobs. You have to get to the top of that mountain and get employed by a capitalist before some other person does. Now that is selfish, but that's just how the system works. It alienates people that much that it makes them feel that they have to be selfish in order to survive and feed their families. Why then do many people find themselves turning to drugs, to alcohol, to murdering other people, to theft? It's purely because of this alienation that capitalism creates in the minds of workers.
Here's an illustration. In 2010, the United States President Barack Obama addressed a large audience of college students. At one point in his speech, he announced that young people will now be able to remain on their parents' health insurance plan until age 26. I don't ever recall hearing a louder, more thunderous, or more sustained applause than I did then. Had the president announced that a cure for cancer had been discovered, it is highly doubtful that the applause would have been as loud or as long.
Also, using Barack Obama as an example to try and show how bad socialism is not a smart move at all, because Obama is not even a socialist. He's a liberal. Also, it's very common for conservatives and even right-wing libertarians to get very confused between socialism and liberalism. And if I had to pick one out of socialism and liberalism, it's actually liberalism that makes people selfish because of how individualistic it is.
The rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer. The top 1% of people on the planet have half the wealth. Western corporations are plundering developing countries. Capitalism is on its last legs.
Okay, now we're definitely getting somewhere.
Really?
Oh, shit.
The truth is that global inequality is tumbling. Yeah, the rich are getting richer, but the poor are getting richer faster.
I don't think so, pal.
Now, capitalists frequently want to bring down the living standards and the wages of working people in order to maintain profit. And this is very true in our present capitalist society, as we are currently facing a time of crisis, so profits are a lot more difficult to come by. And this is precisely why capitalism must be overthrown. So for anybody who is brave enough to waste your time watching Prageru videos, a link to their channel is in the description. And like I've said, they're just a bunch of conservative opportunists who like to use their huge amounts of wealth to talk shit. And some issues can be quite complicated and controversial, whilst others you might not give a shit about. But anyhow, I would not recommend watching Prageru videos unless you've got nothing to do and you want to fill your head with nonsense.